My name's Joan, I'm your Gamesmistress, and here's a little bit about the magic circle. If you were going to cast a magic spell, the first thing you would need to do is define the ritual space. You decide and declare that in this particular place and for this particular time, the rules are going to be different because you are going to be doing something that goes against commonly accepted ideas about what is or is not possible. And regardless of whether or not you believe in that sort of thing, practically speaking, play and playfulness do function as though they were a kind of magic, and games function as though they were a ritual that we can use to summon the power of that magic. Whenever you play a game, whether you mean to or not, you and your fellow players are creating a temporary miniature world where the rules are different from the reality that you live in during your regular lives. Inside that miniature world, trivia questions might actually be really important instead of trivial, and the players will find themselves caring about those trivia questions as if they really were important. From inside a game's miniature world, we can get into deadly battles with our friends, with ships or armies or swords or whatever, and all the while, we can be confident in our knowledge that everybody's going to be okay, even if we get seriously injured or killed. We can do all kinds of things that would seem strange or even upsetting under normal circumstances. And if we do a good job of defining the boundaries of that temporary world, everybody who's playing with us can have a great time safely during their stay. There's a term for this in the realm of tabletop games. We call it, appropriately enough, the magic circle. And today I'm going to teach you how to draw that magic circle around your play space and use it to make the most out of the time that you spend playing games with your friends and family. The magic circle is the barrier between the regular world that we experience over the course of our everyday lives and the playful space that we enter into when we're having a lot of fun playing a game. Let me give you an example. If, in the course of your everyday life, you started acting like this, people might think you're having some kind of a seizure or possibly a psychotic episode. At the very least, they might think you're trying to play charades with them for no apparent reason and with no apparent context, which is weird. But if you do that exact same thing while you're inside the magic circle of an actual game of charades, nobody will be weirded out at all, because they'll be too busy yelling out names and places and stuff, trying to guess what movie title you're thinking about. The magic circle has two main purposes: to protect the play space from the outside world so you can keep things fun, and to protect the outside world from weird things that happen inside the play space so they don't end up spilling over and make people's regular lives awkward and uncomfortable. Let's take these one at a time. First, protecting the play space. There are all kinds of things that can intrude on a game and stop it from being fun. For example, there are a lot of game enthusiasts who would really prefer if you left your phone away from the game table because they don't like when interruptions from people's phones intrude on the game space and break the flow of it. But that's only about manners. The magic circle doesn't just keep out text messages and phone calls. It also keeps out shame and fear and other emotions that can really keep us from having a good time. Out in the regular world, we tend to put a lot of effort into avoiding making mistakes. In fact, it's been my experience that most people these days are pathologically terrified of ever being seen to mess anything up, ever. We'd rather not try at all than allow somebody to see us trying and failing. All that business about fear of failure is a whole other episode that I'm going to need to write, and I will get to it. But for now, you can just watch all those famous YouTube videos by Ken Robinson and Brené Brown and so on to see why fear of failure is a disaster for our businesses, a disaster for our schooling, a disaster for our relationships, and on and on and on. For now, I'm just going to focus on why it's a disaster at the game table. If you already know before a game starts exactly how it's going to end, well, then it's not really worth playing, is it? It's not like watching a favorite movie that you've already seen 100 times. I mean, you can still enjoy that because you're just watching, but if you're going to actually make the effort to learn and play a game, then it just feels pointless if you already know ahead of time exactly what's going to happen. For a game to be any fun at all to play, you have to not know how it's going to turn out. The uncertainty is what makes it exciting and interesting. And if the players are too uncomfortable with that uncertainty, they're just not going to be able to enjoy the experience. In our regular lives, uncertainty can sometimes be a source of joy, but it's often a source of fear and anxiety. And when we get used to associating uncertainty with anxiety and punishment, we crave control. We need to be able to know ahead of time exactly what's going to happen, or else we just won't want to get into something in the first place. So if we approach playing games in the way that we tend to approach our regular lives, those games are pretty much guaranteed to make us feel anxious and fearful and terrified, not happy and relaxed and connected with ourselves and with each other. To make it possible for playtime to be any fun at all, we need to change the rules. We need to create a world within the world where players can actually feel safe making terrible, stupid mistakes, or being themselves, or causing their friends to fail horrendously at whatever it is they're trying to do. All of these things can be really, really scary in the real world, but they don't have to be that way at the game table. When we draw our magic circle, we get to decide what the rules within that circle are going to be. We can decide that within the bounds of this game, within the agreed upon rules of how that game works, it is okay to try and fail. We will not judge each other, and we will not judge ourselves for trying and failing. When we're free of the fear and shame that the outside world would inflict upon us for failing, we can feel free to try things we would otherwise be too frightened to even think about. So step one is to start every single game by making sure everyone there understands that this is not the real world. This is a game world. Inside the game world, we're all going to try to win, but we're not going to treat it like a matter of life and death, because it isn't. We're not going to cheat, we're not going to drag in any sort of outside baggage to manipulate each other or anything like that. Most importantly of all, we are not going to give anybody a hard time about how well they're doing or not doing in the game. Now, trash talking and bantering is fine, but you know what? We'll come back to that later. Now, the Magic Circle also keeps our regular world safe from conflict that comes from within the play space. Okay, stop me if you've heard this one before. Somebody was playing a board game with their spouse, it's usually Monopoly or Risk, and they lost so badly that they got mad at the spouse in the regular world, and somebody had to sleep on the couch for some unspecified amount of time. It's basically a cliche. When there's no magic circle around a game to protect the players, that kind of thing can happen pretty much every time you play. Not much of an incentive to bust out a game, is it? Some players wind up entering into a game without really understanding that this is a liminal space where the rules are different from the ones that govern our regular lives. They end up treating it as an extension of their everyday lives. And when somebody makes a move in the game that causes them to fail at something they were trying to do in the game, they respond the way they would if somebody actually did something like that for real over the course of their business or something like that, which nobody with a conscience would ever actually do. I wouldn't drive a friend into bankruptcy, not for real. I would totally do it to them in a board game, but in real life, I'm going to try and help them succeed, of course. And yet, even for people like me, there can be those moments when the magic circle falters, and that stab in the back from your trusted friend can actually kind of sting a bit, so maybe you spend the rest of the game trying to make sure they don't win. And maybe after the game's over, you still end up carrying a bit of residual resentment back to your lives together, whether you meant to or not. Is that fair? Is that okay? I mean, it's a pretty good reason to not play again. I mean, if it made your lives worse. No player wants that. No game should do that. When actors play the role of a villain, they need to step outside their normal ideas of what is moral or immoral so that they can play the part and make us believe it. In fact, a lot of actors really enjoy playing villains because it's fun for them to cut loose and twirl their mustaches and do the maniacal laughter thing. But we don't hold that against them after the director yells cut. Because they were playing. The rituals of the theater make it clear that Brutus and Cassius aren't actually murdering Julius Caesar on stage while we watch, and so we don't hold it against the actors for doing this. Unless we do. The human race is doomed. But it's one thing to do this for actors on a stage or a screen. It can be quite another thing to do it for ourselves and our friends when we try to crush each other's hopes and dreams playing a board game in our imaginary little worlds. We're just the audience for what those actors are doing in character. We're not just audience when it comes to games. We're participants too. And that draws us much closer to what's going on in that imaginary world. And that can make it a lot harder for us to draw that line separating fiction from reality. So, step 2, when the game is over, you need to banish the imaginary world. Send it away and return to your regular life. And you need to view everything that you and your friends did in that imaginary world through the lens of play. I mean, if we're playing Monopoly or something, and I actually reached over into your wallet and stole 20 actual dollars from you, I would expect you to be very angry with me, and I would think you would be completely justified in that. But if I drew a card in the game that said, steal $20 worth of Monopoly money from a player of your choice, and I happened to pick you, that was just part of the game. So be annoyed with me during the game, sure. Get revenge on me during the game, why not? But if you're still mad at me for that after the game is over, you are still trapped inside that fictional world, and you need to get out and back to your regular life. There are a lot of different rituals that you can use to help you to banish that game world. The traditional one, of course, is to stand up from the table, shake your opponent's hands, and congratulate them on a game well played. That one actually works quite well in my experience for putting the game space away in your heads and coming back to a place where you're dealing with people as people. But another thing you can try is having a post-mortem conversation where the players talk about the things that happened in the game and what they were thinking and feeling at different points and how they came to make some of their decisions. My favorite way is to thank the other players for playing with me while I'm putting all the pieces back into the box. This establishes a clear distinction between the people who were in the game, represented by the pieces that are being put away, and the people that we are outside the game, which are the people I'm talking to when I say thank you. These 2 steps are all you need to use the magic circle, but don't forget it's just a tool, and getting good at using a tool takes skill and practice. In other words, you're probably going to mess this up sometimes, like for real. Like failing in ways that are not actually okay, ways that involve saying and doing things that actually kind of hurt your friend's feelings. And you pretty much just have to accept that that risk is going to be there, and so do they. In worlds of play from inside the circle, the solution to mistakes usually involves an understanding that it is a game, not real life. It requires us to believe that we're all trying our best, and that sometimes that'll lead to success, and sometimes it won't. In our regular lives, in the world that creates the magic circle inside itself, the solution to mistakes has to involve a willingness to make a sincere effort to do better, and a willingness to forgive. And that includes times when we have violated the sanctity of the circle. Times when we brought things from outside into the game, like treating people favorably because of our regular world connections to them. And also times when we bring things from inside the game world out of the magic circle, like holding it against somebody for a move that they did against us in a game that we played. When we break the circle, we actively rob play of its power to transport us, to elevate us, to show us what's possible when we can act without fear. I've been guilty of this myself plenty of times, and that's one of the reasons why I'm so big on really making an effort to do better with these things. So how can you learn to use this tool as skillfully as possible to make sure that the circle will hold strong for you and your playmates and keep your games fun? I've got 3 tips for you. First of all, make it clear to everyone at your table that you're all going to try your best to win, but we are not going to give anybody a hard time for losing. Good-natured teasing and trash-talking can be fun, but actually being hurtful will ruin the game. So my rule is this. If the person I'm trash-talking actually thinks it's funny, I feel like I'm fine there. But the moment I end up hurting somebody's feelings, that can ruin the game for everyone. So if you don't know your fellow players well enough to be sure, it's probably better to be safe than sorry. Secondly, make sure everyone knows that grudges belong inside the game and not outside. If you're playing Risk and somebody stabs you in the back, like they attack you when they said that they wouldn't, that is something that they did inside the play space, not outside. If they made that play with a genuine belief that it was the best way for them to try to win the game, then you have every right to retaliate within the context of that game, but you don't get to take the task about it in the world outside the game. Now, if you're dedicating all of your energy in a game just to making sure that somebody else loses, like to the detriment of your own shot at winning, you are violating the circle and inviting all kinds of contamination into it. If there's somebody at the table, that one person who always just picks on the same opponent every time, it's like they're not even trying to play the game. They're just trying to make that one person miserable. Players like that make games awkward, not just for the people they pick on, but for everyone. So for your next game session, maybe don't invite them back again. And thirdly, enjoy the beauty of that world within the world. See it for what it is. Explore it as deeply as you want to. Test its limits. Try and succeed and try and fail and try again. The more you're able to appreciate that world, the easier time you're going to have in creating and maintaining the circle that defines its boundaries. We're going to go into more depth on the details of the play contract, which is kind of the equivalent of the magical symbols and runes that the circle is composed of, in another video. But for now, I invite you to think about the ways that your time at play can influence your time in your regular life, and vice versa. The magic circle isn't like a brick wall. It's actually quite porous, and sometimes the good things from outside, things like our connection to each other, our shared life experience, our private jokes, and our ability to trust one another, can seep in through and into the world of play, deepening it, enriching it. And sometimes the things that we experience uniquely in play, like our willingness to be bold or to try something even though it might not work, those things can also seep out into the rest of our lives. Imagination and reality are not enemies, they're dance partners. And through play, we can not only watch them do their thing, we can join in the dance with them. If that's not magic, I don't know what is. Thank you so much for watching. This channel is supported by Patreon. You can also hire me to help you make the most of your game nights at joanthegamesmistress.com. If you can't afford any of that, you can still help me out with a like, sub, ding for free. Tell me in the comments if you've got any thoughts you'd like to share about the Magic Circle or its more legalistic sibling, the play contract. But remember, mean comments get deleted, mean people get banned, so play nice. Your turn.